HIMS stock is one of those companies that you want to buy as many shares as possible over the next many years to hold this stock for a decade or more. It's that type of special company. The growth profile with this company and the valuation it's sitting at right now, those two things in comparison to one another make for one of the best values in the entire market, in my opinion. This is a telehealth company that is disrupting the healthcare space, helping people with hair loss, sexual health, weight loss, anxiety and depression, skin care, etc. And they're just now in the early stages of disrupting the healthcare industry and absolutely taking over the telehealth industry. We got two major pieces of news here as I'm recording this video. It's May 5th, 2025. These two major pieces of news were one, Q1 earnings for 2025 for HIMS, and two, a new executive added to the C-suite that's an absolute stud. We're going to get into both those pieces of news and why HIMS stock is that special type of stock that you need to buy as many shares as possible and do not stop buying for the next many years and hold it for the next decade plus. But first, if you're new here, welcome. I'm Austin. I'm a co-owner of cloudmusicsuite.com. I'm also a stock market investor. Most importantly for this video, I'm a HIMS shareholder, and I have been for a little while now. It's one of the positions I'm building the most aggressively in my portfolio. And that's crazy to say because I'm up massively on my position. First, let's talk about the addition to the management team that is going to help push them into the next growth phase, which is a crazy thing to say because this is one of the best growth companies out there, but they're making acquisitions in terms of bringing veterans onto the management team that are going to help them become even more efficient, even more profitable, and even more disruptive in the healthcare space. HIMS & Hers appoints global operations expert and Amazon veteran as Chief Operations Officer. Nader Kabani brings more than 2 decades of experience building global operational infrastructure at some of the world's most recognized consumer brands. In his nearly 20 years at Amazon, he led the acquisition of PillPack and the launch of Amazon Pharmacy and built the operational backbone for flagship offerings including Amazon Logistics, Amazon Flex, Amazon Kindle, Kindle Direct Publishing, Amazon Music, and Prime Video Services. This was the guy behind some of the products that you use every single day. He also led Amazon's global COVID-19 vaccination task force, responsible for vaccinating over 1 million employees, contractors, drivers, and their families. Additionally, Nader held executive leadership roles at Flexport and Symbotic, bringing innovative transportation and logistics expertise and large-scale AI robotics to global retail companies. This guy, his goal is going to be to make HIMS & Hers Health the most efficient company in the telehealth space so that they can disrupt even more, so that the CEO can focus on absolutely crushing everyone else in the telehealth space, while this new Chief Operations Officer can allow him to do that by making this business insanely efficient. Now, the second piece of news that we got for HIMS & Hers was their Q1 2025 results. I want to jump straight into it with the headline numbers. They had revenue, this absolutely blew my expectations out of the water, by the way. They had revenue of $586 million, which was up a ridiculous 111% year over year in Q1 of 2025. They had net income of $49.5 million. And by the way, that's up from $26 million just 1 quarter ago. That's a more than $20 million increase sequentially. Absolutely insane net income growth, and they are just getting started. They had adjusted EBITDA of $91.9 million in Q1 of 2025. Their subscribers grew to 2.4 million, up 38% year over year in Q1 of 2025. They reaffirmed full year 2025 revenue guidance of 2.3 to 2.4 billion, and they raised their adjusted EBITDA guidance to a range of 295 million to 335 million. Also, this is really cool, targets of at least 6.5 billion in revenue and 1.3 billion in adjusted EBITDA. So if we take the high end of their revenue guidance range, 2.4 billion, let's say that's what they report for full year 2025. They're saying they're going to have at least 6.5 billion. That's a 2.7x of revenue over a 5-year span. You're going to be hard pressed to find many companies out there that are they're putting out there publicly that they're going to have at least a 2.7x over a 5-year span in terms of revenue. And that doesn't even take into account profitability. I would love for them to add some net income guidance to this or some margin guidance to this over time, but we also got adjusted EBITDA guidance for 2030. So if we take the full year 2025 guidance, high end of the range for EBITDA, 335 million, and we compare it to the 1.3 billion they expect in 2030, that is nearly a 4x in adjusted EBITDA over a 5-year span. Once again, you're going to be extremely hard pressed to not only find a company that is growing their adjusted EBITDA by 4x in a 5-year span, but also putting it out there publicly and saying the words at least. They're at least going to have 1.3 billion of adjusted EBITDA guidance. The crazy thing about HIMS, I think that both these numbers for the 2030 guidance they just announced are actually sandbagged. Believe it or not, I think these are way, way lower than what they actually think they're going to report. I think what they want to do is each and every quarter come in and bring that revenue guidance up just a little bit. Bring that adjusted EBITDA guidance up just a little bit. So maybe a couple quarters from now, instead of 6.5 billion, they're saying 6.55 billion. And then a couple quarters from that, 6.6 billion in 2030. And then a few quarters later, 6.7 billion in 2030. And they're bringing that adjusted EBITDA guidance up. They're saying, yeah, we're actually thinking 1.4 billion now in 2030. They're just going to keep on bringing this up, and it's going to keep that long-term growth story intact in investors' minds. Every single time HIMS reports earnings, they're going to talk about this 2030 guidance, or at least every few quarters. It's going to keep the long-term growth trajectory in the mind of the investor. They don't want investors that are short-term minded. They're using this as a trading vehicle. They want investors that are going to be holding this stock for the next 5 to 10 to 15 years. And that is absolutely what they're going to attract if they keep talking about these long-term growth outlooks. I love to see a public long-term growth outlook from a company. All right, so let's check out the rest of their first quarter 2025 highlights. Gross margin was 73% for the first quarter of 2025. That's a decrease of 9% over a 1-year span. Although they had absolutely ridiculous revenue growth of 111%, they also had crazy increase in the cost of revenue. So cost of revenue went up over 3x. From Q1 of 2024, their cost of revenue was 49 million. In the quarter they just reported, cost of revenue was 155 million, which made their gross margin absolutely crumble from 82% down to 73%. That is the worst thing you're going to find in this entire earnings report. It is definitely a worrisome thing to see. Typically, worst case scenario, we'd like to see cost of revenue rising at the same rate as revenue is rising. So if they had 111% revenue growth, the cost of revenue can also go up by 111%. That's really like worst case scenario. Best case scenario, they're bringing the revenue up and the cost of revenue is increasing by a lesser percentage than that, which means the gross margin would go up. It's hard to get past a gross margin of about 80%. HIMS was already at 82%, but being all the way down at 73 is not a good look. They definitely need to figure out ways to get that under control specifically. Focusing on those higher gross margin products for the rest of 2025 would be a great idea in order to get that gross margin back in the right spot. But when we look at operating expenses, they're doing a great job of keeping the growth rate of the operating expenses lower than the growth rate of the revenue. Total operating expenses were up a lot, but they were up a lot less than revenue was up, which means the income from operations absolutely exploded. Q1 of 2024, they had 9.9 million of income from operations. Now they're all the way up to 57.9 million of income from operations. Very, very impressive. Net income also exploded, almost a 5x in terms of net income growth. $11 million in Q1 of 2024, all the way up to $49.5 million in Q1 of 2025. And that equates to EPS of 20 cents a share in comparison to just 5 cents a share 1 year ago. And the balance sheet remains in an extremely, extremely strong spot. They've got 446 million of current assets with only 208 million of current liabilities, of which $0 of that is debt. And with all this crazy growth, HIMS is only trading at a 63.5 forward PE ratio. They're over 2xing their revenue on a year-over-year basis. They're nearly 5xing their net income on a year-over-year basis. To have growth metrics like that and only be trading around a 60 for the forward PE, and remember, they almost always come in and beat their numbers every single quarter. So it's really probably more like a 55 or a 58 forward PE. To only be trading there with that kind of growth profile and the runway of growth they have in front of them, and now the long-term growth targets that they have for 2030, they're going to over 2.7x their revenue from now to 2030. They're going to nearly 4x their adjusted EBITDA from now to 2030. And I think those are sandbag numbers. HIMS stock is one of the best deals in the market right now, and I'll be picking up as many shares as I possibly can for the foreseeable future. And if we get any type of fear-based drops with HIMS and HERS, rest assured I'm going to buy even heavier. Let me know what you're doing with HIMS. Do you already own the stock? Are you looking to enter a position? Are you selling the stock, shorting the stock? Let me know your plan with HIMS and HERS Health stock. I want to hear about it in the comments below. One of my favorite parts of posting here on YouTube is having some conversation with you guys down there. So I look forward to seeing that and chatting with you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Have an amazing day.